George Michael, from pop icon to $200 million fortune. George Michael wasn't just a singer, he was a global superstar who turned his voice and songwriting into one of the biggest music empires of the 1980s and 1990s. With over 125 million records sold worldwide, countless awards, and a fortune of over $200 million, George Michael remains one of the most successful British musicians in history. This is the story of how a boy from London rose to global fame, built an incredible fortune, and left behind a musical and financial legacy that still earns millions today. Early life. George Michael was born Georgios Kyriakos Panayotou on June 25, 1963, in East Finchley, London. His father was a Greek Cypriot restaurateur, and his mother was an English dancer. Growing up in a working-class family, George was passionate about music from a young age, teaching himself instruments and recording homemade tracks with friends. In high school, he met Andrew Ridgeley, and the two would later form the pop duo that changed their lives. Wham! Wham! The breakthrough. In 1981, George and Andrew launched Wham!, a duo that quickly exploded onto the global stage. Their debut album, Fantastic, 1983, reached #1 in the UK, but it was their second album, Make It Big, 1984, that turned them into international superstars. With hits like Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, Freedom, and Careless Whisper, Wham! Became one of the first Western pop groups to perform in China, breaking cultural barriers. Money-wise, Wham! Sold over 30 million records, with George writing and singing the majority of their hits, giving him royalties that continue to pay millions even today. By the time Wham! Disbanded in 1986, George Michael was already worth around $25 million at just 23 years old. Solo career and record-breaking sales. George launched his solo career with Faith, 1987, an album that became a global phenomenon. It sold 25 million copies worldwide, won a Grammy Award for Album of the Year, and made him one of the biggest solo acts in history. The Faith Tour alone grossed over $25 million in the late 1980s, making George one of the highest-paid performers of the decade. By the early 1990s, he had signed massive record deals worth tens of millions, securing upfront advances and royalties that put his net worth past $100 million before he turned 30. Music business and royalties. Unlike many pop stars, George Michael was a songwriter and producer, meaning he owned publishing rights to much of his music. Every time Faith, Careless Whisper, or Last Christmas plays on the radio, George's estate earns royalties. Last Christmas alone earns over $2 million annually in royalties, making it one of the most profitable Christmas songs ever. During his career, George sold over 125 million records, generating hundreds of millions in revenue for record labels, tours, and his own publishing empire. Shash. Tours and live performances. George Michael wasn't just a studio artist, he was a global touring force. Faith World Tour, 1988 to 89, grossed $25 million. Cover-to-Cover Tour, 1991, packed stadiums across the world. 25 Live Tour, 2006 to 2008, grossed over $200 million across 100 shows. His live shows alone earned him well over $300 million in career touring revenue, with a huge share going directly into his pocket. Real estate and lifestyle. George Michael invested heavily in real estate, owning multi-million-dollar properties in London, Oxfordshire, Los Angeles, and Sydney. His Highgate mansion in London alone was worth over $10 million. He lived a lavish lifestyle with luxury cars, designer fashion, and private retreats. But he was also incredibly generous with his wealth, donating tens of millions to charities, often in secret. Controversies and personal struggles. Despite his massive success, George Michael's life wasn't without struggles. He faced legal issues, public scandals, and health problems that at times slowed his career. Yet, even through controversies, his music continued to sell and generate royalties, keeping his fortune intact. Final years and death. George Michael passed away on December 25, 2016, at just 53 years old. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $200 million, with his estate continuing to earn millions annually from royalties, licensing, and streaming. His estate was inherited by family and close friends, while his music continues to bring in revenue every Christmas and beyond. Legacy George Michael wasn't just a singer. He was a songwriter, producer, and businessman who built a $200 million fortune on talent, creativity, and control of his music. From Wham to Faith to timeless classics like Last Christmas and Careless Whisper, George Michael's impact on music and wealth is undeniable. He remains one of the best-selling artists of all time, a man who turned pop stardom into generational wealth that continues to grow even after his passing. Closing line. George Michael's voice made him a star, but his songwriting, business savvy, and dedication turned him into a $200 million music empire whose legacy will last forever.